When we think about what gives someone an advantage, our minds usually jump to things like money, or power, or just sheer size. But what if we've got it all wrong? What if our biggest strengths are actually hiding in plain sight, disguised as our weaknesses? Okay, let's get into this.
We have this tendency to look at a situation, see the giant, see the little guy, and we immediately decide who's going to win based on what we think we know. We assume the battle is over before it's even started.
So we're going to flip that script. We're going to unpack three huge advantages that so-called underdogs have, advantages that are almost always missed. And to kick things off, we've got to start by completely rethinking the most famous underdog story of all time. Right, we all know the story. David, this little shepherd boy, somehow takes down the terrifying warrior Goliath. It's the ultimate story for an impossible victory. But what if the way we tell that story is completely backwards? Okay, so the myth, the one we all know, is that a weak shepherd boy beats a mighty warrior in a sword fight. The reality? Well, this was never a fair fight. But it was Goliath who was at the massive disadvantage. See, ancient armies basically had three kinds of soldiers. You had cavalry on horses, heavy infantry, that's Goliath, and then you had projectile warriors, like archers and slingers. And David was a slinger. Think about it. Goliath is weighed down by 100 pounds of armor. He's basically a human tank, built for a close quarters fight. David, on the other hand, is fast, he's mobile, and he's got a long-range weapon. He had zero intention of getting close enough for a sword fight. He was basically bringing a gun to a knife fight. And make no mistake, that sling was a devastatingly powerful weapon. Ballistics experts have actually calculated that a stone from an expert's sling would hit with the stopping power of a modern handgun. Seriously, Goliath had about as much of a chance against David as a guy with a sword would have against someone with a .45 caliber pistol. And that brings us to the first crucial lesson. Underdogs get this incredible surge of power when they just refuse to play by the giant's rules. They don't try to outmuscle the giant, they change the entire game to play to their strengths, exactly like David did. T.E. Lawrence, Lawrence of Arabia, he got this. His small group of Bedouin warriors couldn't go head-to-head with the Turkish army's firepower, so they didn't. They used what they did have, their knowledge of the desert, their incredible speed, and they attacked the Turks where they were weakest and least prepared. And this isn't just about cool stories. There's hard data here. Political scientist Ivan Aragintoft studied wars between giants and underdogs spanning over 200 years. And what he found was incredible. When the little guy tries to fight like the big guy, they win less than a third of the time. But when they switch to unconventional, guerrilla-style tactics, their win rate more than doubles. That's a huge deal. You want a perfect modern-day example? A software mogul named Vivek Ranadive started coaching his daughter's basketball team. These were 12-year-old girls who, bless their hearts, couldn't shoot, couldn't dribble, couldn't pass, so they just didn't try. Instead, he had them play a relentless full-court press the entire game, every game. They basically used pure effort and chaos to attack the other teams at their weakest moment, right as they were trying to get the ball in bounds. They broke all the unwritten rules of youth basketball, and they made it all the way to the national championships. All right, that was advantage number one. Now for number two, and this one is a little counterintuitive. It's the idea that sometimes the obstacles in our way aren't just things we need to get through. They're the very things that make us stronger. We're talking about desirable difficulties. It's a term from psychology, and it suggests that when we're forced to struggle with something, we have to engage with it on a much deeper level. And in the process, we develop these incredible new skills to compensate. In one study, researchers gave students a test using a font that was really hard to read. And guess what? Their scores actually went up. The difficulty forced them to slow down, to focus, and to think more deeply. Now think about what that means in the real world. David Boies is one of the most famous trial lawyers in America. This is the guy who represented Al Gore in Bush v. Gore and argued for marriage equality in front of the Supreme Court. And he's severely dyslexic. He can barely read. So here's the thing. Because reading was so incredibly hard for him, Boies was forced to develop other skills. He couldn't just rely on reading thousands of pages of legal documents. So instead, he became an almost superhuman listener. He learned to catch every tiny detail, every hesitation in a witness's voice, and he had to learn how to boil down massively complex cases into their simple, powerful core. His greatest weakness literally became his superpower in the courtroom. Which brings us perfectly to our third and final advantage. Realizing that being the giant, being at the top, actually comes with its own set of hidden weaknesses. Things like prestige, elite status, tons of resources, they can actually hold you back and even destroy your confidence.
I mean, this is the classic question, right? We're all told to aim for the big pond, go to the best school, work at the top company. But a century ago, the Impressionist painters faced this exact problem. They could try to get their art into the famous Paris Salon, where they'd be a tiny little fish lost in an ocean of thousands of paintings. Or they could create their own little pond, their own art show, where their radical new style could actually be seen. They chose the little pond, and they completely changed art history. Now, if you think that's just a nice story, check out this data. This chart looks at science students at a good but not elite school versus students at Harvard. Here's the crazy part. The students in the bottom third at Harvard are actually smarter. They have higher test scores than the top students at the other school. And yet, they drop out of science majors at the exact same rate. Why? It's called the big fish, little pond effect. And what it proves is that our success isn't just about how smart we are in a vacuum. It's about how smart we feel next to the people around us. Being a pretty smart fish in a pond full of geniuses can be absolutely crushing. Even if you're brilliant, you start comparing yourself, you feel inadequate, and you give up on things that you were totally capable of doing. Sometimes that little pond is where you really have the space to grow.
So after all this, what's the big takeaway? It's that we need to totally rethink our definitions of strength and weakness, of what an advantage even is. So let's recap. 1. Underdogs win when they break the rules and refuse to play the giant's game. 2. They learn to turn their biggest struggles into their most powerful assets by embracing desirable difficulties. And 3. They understand that being a big fish in a little pond can be way more powerful than being a little fish in a big one. The giants of the world, they are not what they seem. A lot of the time, the very things that make them look so powerful are actually the source of their biggest weaknesses. So, I want you to think about the challenges you're up against right now. What if the very thing you see as your greatest disadvantage is actually the key to your greatest success?
Hey, if this got you thinking and you want more explainers that challenge the way we see the world, make sure you subscribe to UNLTD. Thanks for watching.